Welcome to the Mills family, Part 2A, which covers Hiram Elias Mills and Adelaide A. McLean, who lived in New Baltimore, Michigan in the late 1800s. We'll start by looking at our family tree. Mom's parents were Dorothy Estelle Fleming and Edward Guy Doherty. Edward's parents were John J. Doherty and Lily Mae Mills. Lily's parents were Abby Bell Cotton and Harvey Orestes Mills, and his parents were Daniel Morris Mills and Elvira Eliza Dennison. They had 7 children together, and Hiram Elias Mills was their first. Hiram Elias Mills was born on February 18, 1848. His father, Daniel Morris Mills, a farmer, was 24, and his mother, Elvira Eliza Dennison Mills, was 21. His parents had relocated from Castle Creek, New York, less than 2 years prior, in a large group made up of the Mills, Dennison, and Carey families. The area they settled in was originally called Hart Settlement, but today we know it as Chesterfield in Macomb County, Michigan. The Mills family's first farm in Michigan consisted of 80 acres on a sandy ridge near 23 Mile Road and Gratiot Avenue, where Hiram was born. When Hiram was about 7 and had 2 younger siblings, the family moved on to 30 acres purchased from his grandfather and namesake, Hiram Dennison, located just north of New Baltimore on Burden Road. As their family grew, so did their farm. His parents had 4 more children and bought adjoining property until the farm consisted of 100 acres. They raised wheat, corn, oats, and buckwheat. Their barn held cows, sheep, pigs, and horses, in addition to several types of poultry in their chicken coop. The area was already growing rapidly when the Mills family arrived in 1846 and only continued to do so. Nearby Mount Clemens was a major hub that mostly dealt in manufactured goods in the 1850s and 1860s, but shifted to tourism while Hiram was a young man. In the 1860s, Hiram followed the most common trade of the time. He worked on the family farm in the summer and the lumber woods in the winter. On his days off, he may have frequented places like the Red Ribbon Hall, which was built in 1857. It served as a community gathering place, hosting various types of entertainment like dances, plays, and parties. The Evans Hotel was another option he had. It was built in 1855 and became the New Baltimore Mineral Baths when the bathing craze swept through. The first bathhouse in Mount Clemens opened in 1873 to raging success. Before long, Mount Clemens was known as Bath City, with people coming from all over the world to cure what ailed them in the natural sulfur springs. It was a brilliant marketing strategy. At least 3 weeks were required to fully access the curative powers of the mineral baths, with some guests staying upwards of 3 months. Much of the area consisted of support services like restaurants, theaters, and shops. Our Mills family probably had access to a wide variety of entertainment options: opera houses, theaters, saloons, boating and bathing in the summer, ice skating and sledding in the winter. The Hathaway Institute in New Baltimore was built in 1877 thanks to a generous endowment from local philanthropist Gilbert Hathaway. Hiram's 3 sisters were teachers and, while it's unknown if they attended or taught there, the building is a reflection of the county's commitment to education at the time. In the late 1870s, Hiram moved to Saginaw, Michigan, where he was a farmhand there. His brother Harvey lived just a farm over, where he worked as a farmhand as well. When their father died in 1882, Hiram stayed in Saginaw and Harvey tended to the family farm until Hiram's return some years later. In 1887, Hiram married at the age of 39. His bride, 33-year-old Ada McLean, was also known as Ida or Ada to her friends. Ida was born on July 16, 1855 in Schuyler County, New York, the second of 11 children born to Wanton McLean and Sarah Ann Allen. Her family moved from New York to Bethany in Gratiot County, Michigan, sometime before 1880. Shortly after their marriage, Hiram and Ida moved into the large frame house on the Mills farm on Burden Road in Chesterfield. His younger brother Harvey had been managing the farm until then, and he moved north with his young family around the time Hiram returned with his bride. 3 of their younger siblings were at home. 19-year-old Jenny, a teacher who would marry the next year. Festus was 24 and would marry in 1890, both of whom established farms nearby. And 27-year-old Susan, who was also a teacher. At some point, a separate residence was built for their mother, Elvira, and Susan, who gave up teaching in order to care for their mother when she became ill. Hiram and Ida's first child was born at the Mills farm in the fall of 1889, Pearl Elizabeth Mills. It's unknown when their second child joined the family through adoption, but Frank Hiram Mills was born August 29, 1890, 10 months after Pearl. In 1900, their household consisted of Hiram, Ida, 10-year-old Pearl, and 9-year-old Frank. They also had 15-year-old John Niebauer living with them as their farmhand, child of nearby farmer and friend John Niebauer Sr. In Elvira and Susan's part of the residence, they took in a foster child around that time named Clarence John Stacy, who was about 4 or 5. After Elvira passed away in 1905, Susan and Clarence moved to a small house in the village of New Baltimore. In 1910, Hiram and Ida still had their 2 children at home, now 19 and 18, as well as a 47-year-old boarder who worked as a carpenter building stages for theaters. The local resort industry was in its heyday still, and there were several theaters and opera houses in the area. The Grand Pacific House Hotel on Washington Street still stands and is currently home to the local historical society. In Hiram's lifetime, he saw the railroad come through town, as well as streetcars, horseless carriages, and airplanes. This postcard shows Washington Street in 1910, and while there was an airfield nearby, the airplanes were added to the photo after it was taken. The Mills family was very involved with the First Congregational Church of New Baltimore. Hiram's father had been a deacon. His sister Susan taught the young people's Bible class, and Elvira taught the adult Bible class, which Hiram continued after her passing in 1905. In 1913, Hiram and Ida's daughter Pearl married 22-year-old Robert Emmett Golden, a foreman from Detroit. Her brother Frank was one of the witnesses. They were married less than 2 years when she died of tuberculosis in Detroit on April 10, 1915, no children. Frank married the following year in 1916, leaving Hiram and Ida with an empty nest. Pictured here is the Green Street streetcar depot of the Detroit United Railway, the most common way to get around town at the time. Hiram Elias Mills died in Chesterfield of stomach cancer on November 30th, 1917, at the age of 69. Ida remarried 2 years later, in 1919, to Edwin L. Hartway, a teacher who was 9 years her junior. They moved to the village of New Baltimore, where they lived on Ridge Road for a time, while Ida and Hiram's son Frank took over the family farm. In 1930, Ida and Edwin were living on Euclid Avenue in Mount Clemens, where Edwin was employed as a freight agent for the railroad. They lived here until Ida's death in February of 1940. She had fallen the previous December and fractured her hip. The injury contributed to the coronary embolism she suffered 2 months later. She was 84. Edwin died 3 years later, and they're all buried in the Mills plot at the Oakwood Cemetery in New Baltimore.